previously, we talked about supply and demand, and we can use supply and demand to determine the value of a good or the price they charge. Well, we can, in this chapter, extend that same model to look at the supply and demand for money, carrying cash money on hand. And we can determine the value of that money by looking at supply and demand and when markets clear. So let's go ahead and graph out the supply and demand, and then we're going to look at what happens when there's a shift in the money supply. So here we have on our y-axis, we have the value of money, and on our x-axis, we're going to have the quantity of money. Now, when we think of the value of money, we oftentimes call this 1 over P, where P is equal to our price level. So ways that we can measure the price level, we might measure this in terms of CPI, the GDP deflator. These are different ways we can look at the price level, and the value of money is 1 over P. Now, sometimes that's not very intuitive for us, so I'm going to graph out here on the other y-axis just the exact opposite of this, and I'm going to call this the price level, which is going to be just P. So, for example, if we have here the value 1, then over here is going to be also 1. But if the value of money, or if the price level jumps up to 4, then the value of money is going to be 1 over 4. And so when we talk about this going this direction, this is where price level is high, or as we move in this direction, we might call this inflation. So that's how we're going to set up our graph. Let's go ahead and graph our supply curve first. So the supply curve, we're going to say, is going to be a function of what the Federal Reserve decides to do. And so our supply is going to be perfectly inelastic. There's going to be a set level of money supplied, and that's going to be fixed by the Federal Reserve. The demand is going to be downward sloping, and it's going to look something like this. So this is the money demanded of how much cash on hand people want. So as the value of money is high, people want to have more cash on hand. If the value is low, people want less cash on hand. And so this is where we get equilibrium. So right here is going to be the equilibrium value of money. Now let's look to see what happens when the Federal Reserve enacts policy that's going to increase the money supply. For example, they might reduce the reserve requirement in the fractional banking system. This is going to increase the money supply, which means now this is our new supply curve. And based off of this, we're going to reach a new equilibrium call it P2 for now, of price level. And the question is, well, what impact did that have? Well, it caused the value of money to go down. And here, the inverse of that is it caused the price level to go up because we're going from low to high. And so this policy, by increasing the amount of money supply without a change in the demand, is going to lead to inflation. And that's an example of how we can look at the supply and demand for money and show how a shift out in the supply curve will lead to a higher price level, a lower value of money, and inflation.